good evening, and welcome to Sky Tonight. The moon is in the waxing gibbous phase tonight, with 88% illumination. Look for it in the eastern sky after sunset. Viewers are invited to enable captions in their preferred language to see local observing cities and their current times. Join us for a guided tour of tonight's sky, highlighting the key constellations and celestial events visible from your location. As twilight fades, Venus shines high in the southern sky, a bright anchor for the evening. Vega climbs almost straight overhead, joined soon by the Ring Nebula in the same region. Saturn lingers near the eastern horizon, a subtle treat for early observers. Later, Albireo, Altair, and the Dumbbell Nebula will all be high in the south, while the Crescent Nebula and Deneb rise almost straight overhead. The Alpha Capricornids begin to show, and Mars appears near the east. Toward morning, the southern delta Aquariids pick up, and Mercury joins the eastern sky before dawn. Diphtys stands out high in the south, and as the sky brightens, keep an eye out. We'll be tracking satellite crossings overhead, with 6 visible passes ahead. Venus is the dazzling silver-white point high in the southern sky tonight. After the moon, it's the brightest object in the sky. You truly cannot miss it. Look for its steady glow as it sets toward the west later in the evening. Watch in Los Angeles first at 8:30 in the evening. By 8:50 in the evening, it is New York's turn, and London closes the night at 9:45 in the evening. In 1970, the Soviet Venera 7 became the first spacecraft ever to land softly on another planet and send back data, though the searing heat and crushing pressure silenced it within about an hour. Vega is almost straight overhead tonight. This bright blue-white star forms the top of the summer triangle. Look for it directly above as it shines brilliantly in the summer sky. In Los Angeles, New York, and London, this star peaks around 11:20 in the evening, and in London it stays above the horizon all night. For a long time, Vega served astronomers as one of the fundamental reference points for defining the star brightness scale. Its apparent magnitude was very close to zero in the magnitude system. Saturn rises near the eastern horizon tonight. Look for a steady golden point low in that direction. It's just beginning to climb into view and will remain visible later in the night. The planet rises across Los Angeles, New York, and London around 11:25 in the evening. The particles comprising Saturn's rings range from tiny dust grains to house-sized boulders, creating a complex system that is constantly being shaped by gravitational interactions and collisions. The Ring Nebula is almost straight overhead tonight. This greenish planetary nebula lies midway between the 2 southern stars of Lyra's little parallelogram, just below Vega. A telescope is needed to see its distinctive smoke ring shape. Los Angeles, New York, and London see the nebula at its highest around 11:35 in the evening. The Ring Nebula was found in 1779 by the French astronomer Antoine Darquier de Pellepoix, and Charles Messier catalogued it as the 57th entry in his famous list that very same year. In catalogs, it is listed as M57. Albireo is high in the southern sky tonight. This golden yellow star marks the head of the Swan and the foot of the Northern Cross in Cygnus. Use a small telescope to split it into its stunning gold and blue components. This star reaches its best view in Los Angeles, New York, and London around 12:15 after midnight. The famous gold and blue contrast of Albireo comes down to temperature, since its orange giant glows at only about 4,400 Kelvin, while its blue-white companion blazes near 13,000 Kelvin. Altair is high in the southern sky tonight. The bright white star flanked by 2 fainter ones forms the low corner of the summer triangle. Look for it shining steadily in the southern sky. Los Angeles, New York, and London all see this star at its peak around 12:35 after midnight. Modern astronomers point out that the real distance between Altair and Vega, about 1415 light-years, makes the physical meeting of the lovers from the legend completely impossible. This is often cited as an example of poetic license in astronomical folklore. The Dumbbell Nebula is high in the southern sky tonight. This greenish nebula lies just north of the little arrow of Sagitta in the Milky Way below Cygnus. A telescope or binoculars will reveal its two-lobed structure. The nebula is highest in Los Angeles, New York, and London around 12:40 after midnight. In 1864, the pioneering astronomer William Huggins pointed his spectroscope at the Dumbbell Nebula and saw the bright lines of glowing gas, making it one of the first nebulae proven to be luminous gas rather than a swarm of unresolved stars. The Crescent Nebula is almost straight overhead tonight. This deep sky object features hydrogen red and oxygen blue hues. Start at Deneb, head towards Sadr and Cygnus, then use a telescope or long exposure to capture its faint arc. Los Angeles, New York, and London all find the nebula at its best around 12:55 after midnight. The Alpha Capricornids meteor shower is active tonight, with meteors streaking from a point in Capricornus. Look halfway up the southern sky and keep your gaze slightly off the radiant to spot the longest trails. Expect about 1 meteor per hour. The radiant reaches its peak position in Los Angeles, New York, and London around 1:10 in the morning. Deneb is almost straight overhead tonight. This brilliant blue-white star marks the tail of the Swan and the top of the Northern Cross. It forms one corner of the Summer Triangle and shines powerfully overhead. Los Angeles, New York, and London all see this star at its highest around 1:25 in the morning, and in London it remains above the horizon all night. Deneb is a blue-white supergiant with a mass about 19 times that of the Sun. The star's brightness exceeds that of the Sun by about 196,000 times, which explains why it remains so well visible despite such an enormous distance. Mars rises near the eastern horizon tonight. Look for its distinctive orange-red glow low in that direction. It's just beginning to appear and will become more visible later in the night. In Los Angeles at 2:40 in the morning, the prime view sweeps eastward, reaching New York by 2:24 in the morning and London by 1:47 in the morning. Mars's axial tilt of about 25 degrees is very similar to Earth's 23.5-degree tilt, meaning the red planet experiences seasonal variations much like Earth does, with distinct seasons in each hemisphere. Phobos begins its first crossing of the apparent disk of Mars. This transit lasts 54 minutes. The event is not visible from Los Angeles and New York due to daylight or twilight, and from London because Mars is below the horizon. Phobos begins its next crossing of the apparent disk of Mars. This transit lasts 54 minutes. London observes this event from 1:23 in the morning to 2:17 in the morning. Los Angeles and New York cannot see the event because Mars is below the horizon. Phobos begins its third and final crossing of the apparent disk of Mars. This transit lasts 54 minutes. New York observes this event from 4:02 in the morning to 4:56 in the morning. Los Angeles cannot see the event because Mars is below the horizon and London is in daylight or twilight at this time. The Southern Delta Aquariids meteor shower is active tonight, with meteors radiating from a point in Aquarius. Look halfway up the southern sky and keep your gaze slightly off the radiant to spot the longest trails. Expect about 6 meteors per hour. The radiant is best placed in Los Angeles, New York, and London around 3:20 in the morning. Mercury rises near the eastern horizon tonight. Look for it low in that direction as it begins to climb into view. It will be visible briefly before twilight brightens the sky. In Los Angeles, the planet rises at 4:51 in the morning, followed by New York at 4:39 in the morning, with London last at 4:11 in the morning. On Mercury, the sunlit surface can soar to about 430 degrees Celsius, then plunge to roughly minus 180 degrees Celsius at night, one of the most extreme temperature swings of any world in the solar system. Difta is high in the southern sky tonight. This bright star lies in Cetus and can be found by following the eastern side of the Great Square southward. Look for it shining steadily in the southern sky. Los Angeles and New York see this star at its highest around 5:15 in the morning, while London finds it best placed at 4:25 in the morning. DIFDA is sometimes called the Autumn Southern Pole Star due to its relatively isolated position in this part of the sky, similar to Fomalhaut, which makes it easy to identify amid the relatively empty surroundings of the constellation Cetus. The Perseids meteor shower is active tonight, with meteors streaking from a point in Perseus. Look high in the northern sky and keep your gaze slightly off the radiant to spot the longest trails. Expect about 6 meteors per hour. The earliest view belongs to Los Angeles at 5:25 in the morning. London waits until 4:25 in the morning, with New York in between at 5:10 in the morning, and in all 3 cities the radiant remains above the horizon all night. The Hubble Space Telescope begins the first crossing of the night. Observers standing on the narrow ground path see the satellite's silhouette cross the moon's disk, lasting only about 1 second. The ground path runs near Shush at 7:49 in the evening west of Sinan at 1:34 in the morning. 28 satellite crossings of the moon were visible from land tonight, and these 6 shown here are the ones whose ground tracks run closest to towns and cities. The Hubble Space Telescope makes the second crossing of the night. This satellite crosses again, tracing a ground path near Tobruk at 7:53 in the evening southwest of Hizwa at 2:09 in the morning. The Hubble Space Telescope follows with the third crossing of the night. This satellite crosses again, its ground path running over the open Atlantic at 8:05 in the evening near Aziz Ulal at 1:52 in the morning. The Hubble Space Telescope produces the fourth crossing of the night. This satellite crosses again, with its ground path extending near Wasun at 8:08 in the evening over the open Pacific at 1:27 in the morning. The Hubble Space Telescope delivers the fifth crossing of the night. This satellite crosses again, its path stretching near Indio at 8:17 in the evening over the open Atlantic at 4:35 in the morning. The Hubble Space Telescope completes the sixth and final crossing of the night. This satellite crosses again, its ground path running over the open Pacific at 9:51 in the evening over the open Atlantic at 2:09 in the morning. A total solar eclipse is coming soon. Follow for details. Come back tomorrow for the next look at the night sky, and good observing in the meantime.